What's up, gangsta? You have tuned your dial to Renegade Files, your underground connection to paranormal deep dives, unsolved mysteriums, and conspiracy culture analysis. I'm your psychedelic tour guide, Lex Gordon, delivering this unauthorized transmission from the Jungle Villa outpost deep in the uncharted tropics. This is Renegade Files episode 64, The Fascinating Connection of Twins. Before I get too deep into it, I just want to give you a quick note. You may hear some hum in the background. That's a fan, because down here in the uncharted tropics, it's over 100 degrees today. And although I have a fine air conditioning and an insulated house with a metal roof, my AC is struggling and my house will not cool off, and the fan is not an option. I have to have it to survive down here in the lab where I'm recording this episode. I have to have the fan. So we're just going to go with the atmospheric hum of the box fan. So hopefully it works. We'll see how this turns out, and there's really nothing more I can do about it. I'd rather do it like this than make you wait any longer for this episode. So we're just going to power on through it. So here we go. Twins are rare. About 3% of newborns are part of a multiple birth, so 2, 3, or more babies born at the same time. And about 97% of that 3% are twins. So twins are not rare among multiple births, but multiple births and twins together are extremely rare, 3% or less. If someone on the mother's side of the family has had twins before, this doubles the chances of having twins. But remember, that only makes it a 6% chance at best. This rarity of twins in the greater population makes the fact that twins often experience coincidences of behavior, preferences, and other factors seem all the more extraordinary. How is it that so many twins report what would otherwise be considered clairvoyance, mind reading, or situations that far exceed what can be explained by coincidence? And beyond the casual quirks and inside jokes that two genetically identical people might share, or two twins who aren't genetically identical, we'll get into that, but some twins have developed into what could only be called a sinister world of bizarre behavior. This episode is a look into the uncanny connections that many twins seem to share. So come with me, my paranormal friend, and on this episode of Renegade Files, we dive deep together and explore the fascinating connection of twins. Part 1. Twins. What's going on there? First of all, being that we are talking about the characteristics of a group of people, it is my genuine and honest disclaimer to say this episode focuses on a topic that categorizes and analyzes the traits of some individuals among an identifiable subset of humans. So let me be clear at the outset that the stories here are about certain individuals who are identical or fraternal twins or are otherwise multiple birth siblings. All twins are different people, just like every person is their own person. So this show is in no way any kind of generalization or judgment about twins as a group. Some twins are the closest of friends. Some twins are total opposites and just really don't like each other at all, and others are everything in between. So I'm not here to cast any evaluation or predetermination about twins in any sense, or about anyone who is a twin, knows a twin, or has seen twins, triplets, or even two guys on the subway wearing the same shirt. Okay? Good. Now, before we dive into the cool stories and situations of twins, we need to go over just a small amount of background information so we can move forward in an informed way. We aren't going into any heavy biology or complex medical terms, just a brief Part 1 level description of the types of twins and what makes them unique compared to both other types of twins and single-born babies in general. This information comes from whattoexpect.com. So thanks to that website for the statistics that follow. There are essentially three types of twins: identical, fraternal, and conjoined. Identical twins are also called monozygotic twins. These are twins who develop from a single fertilized egg. They are the rarest, with identical twins being 0.3% of all births. Identical twins are genetic duplicates, and they have the exact same DNA. They will always have certain traits that are the same, like sex and eye color. However, they may look slightly different due to things like placement in the womb or other environmental factors. Fraternal twins, also called dizygotic twins, occur when two sperm cells fertilize two eggs at once. Fraternal twins don't share identical DNA and are no more genetically similar than other siblings. They can be opposite sexes and can look completely different from one another. The whattoexpect.com article says the only way to find out whether multiples are fraternal or identical is to have them take a DNA test. The screening is virtually 100% accurate. Now, it doesn't say this in the article, but it seems to me if you have twins that are different sexes, it's a safe bet that they're fraternal in a genetic sense because all identical twins share the same biological sex. So no DNA test would be required there, but that's just my observation, and there could be other things going on that I don't understand. Finally, conjoined twins are twins who are physically connected to each other. They are incredibly rare, occurring in just 1 out of 50,000 to 100,000 births. And that's a wide range of error. I don't know why it's so big, and maybe it's because worldwide the reporting isn't 100%. I'm not sure. Conjoined twins form very early on in a pregnancy, when an embryo containing identical twins to be does not completely separate. That causes the two fetuses to stay connected, often at the head, chest, or abdomen, the spine, or the pelvis. It's possible for conjoined twins to share internal organs as well. Sometimes it's possible for surgery to separate conjoined twins. Whether separation can happen depends on where the twins are connected and the number and type of organs they share. We are not going deep into that because, frankly, the subject gives me anxiety just thinking about it. But I will say that I send my best wishes for peace to anyone who has been involved in any way with that situation. Beyond twins, we have what are called higher order multiples. This includes triplets, quadruplets, and quintuplets. And these are far less common than even twins, which we already know are rare. Triplets occur in about 1 of every 10,000 pregnancies. 1 in 700,000 are quadruplets. Anything higher than that, so having 5 or more babies at once, is exceedingly unlikely when we're talking about a natural occurrence. Something like 1 in 60 million. And I think even most of those are someone having 5 or more babies at once is the result of some kind of fertility treatment, overdone or otherwise. I'm no expert. I also didn't delve too deeply into it. So those are some simple descriptions of the various types of twins and how they come to be. Part 2. Twin Tales. We have all heard a story or two about twins being separated and having things in common. But there are also uncanny tales of strange outcomes in trials and people doing unexpected things concerning their twins, and let's get into some of that. Twins Jim Lewis and Jim Springer were separated at birth and adopted by different families. They were both given the name Jim independently by their adoptive families. Both had dogs when they were kids, and they both named their dogs Toy. Both men were married twice, with both of their first wives being named Linda, and both of their second wives being named Betty. Both men had sons named James Allen. They both became sheriff's deputies, and both had the same make and model of car. Okay, so that's pretty good. It's a good start anyway. I mean, the parents naming the kids the same name is one thing. Jim, I guess that's a pretty common name. But both kids naming their dog Toy? What are the chances of that? It's not like Fido. And the wives, both guys marrying twice, both first wives being named Linda, then both second wives named Betty? That's too much. They were both sheriff deputies that had the same car. When you put that all together, it's way more than coincidence can explain, at least in my opinion. So, let's keep rolling on the twin train. I happen to have been friends in high school with a pair of fraternal twins, a boy and a girl. I won't mention their names, but the boy was a surfer and he moved to Hawaii, and his twin sister stayed in her hometown, and at least in her home state for as far as I know to this day. At one point several years ago, I found out that their mother had recently celebrated her birthday, and the twins both gave their mother birthday cards. The twin daughter gave her mom the card in person since they both still lived in the same town. A few days later, a birthday card arrived in the mail from the twin brother in Hawaii, and the mother was shocked to see that it was the same exact greeting card. The twins, without talking about it at all, living 7,500 miles apart, had picked out the same exact birthday card for their mom. Ashley Spinks and Andrea Springer are twins. When they were 21 years old, they both found out that they were pregnant at the same time. 9 months later, they both had twin boys, all 4 babies being born on the same day. That's pretty cool. We could spend hours going over little anecdotal stories like that. They are very interesting. But let's move on to part 3, other twin hijinks. So, in addition to twins often having, doing, or liking the same things, it makes sense. Identical twins can, and sometimes do, get up to some more mischief. When I was in school, there was a pair of identical twin girls who would sometimes go to each other's classes if one of the twins wanted to be somewhere else for some reason. Someone recently told me a story about parents who had twin children and they sent both of them to the same boarding school, but they only sent them one at a time because they only wanted to pay for one of them. So the kids kind of like shared homework and only one of them ever went back and forth. They took turns going to school, so the parents would only have to pay one tuition. That's amazing. When I was a kid, 10 or 11, on vacation in the Bahamas, there were 2 boys my same age, identical twins. We'll call them Andy and Kyle. And they were staying on a sailboat in the marina where we were. And Andy was really cool, and Kyle was kind of bossy and seemed to be a little tattletale and a troublemaker. There was a tiny rowboat that anyone could use to go out into the water around the docks in the marina, but most of the time no one used it. I had taken it around fishing a few times. So one afternoon, the 3 of us, me and the twins, were fishing on the dock, and when Kyle, the tattletale kid, got up and went off to do something, I asked the cool kid, Andy, if he wanted to go out in the rowboat the next day and go fishing on the rocks at the outside of the harbor, and he said yeah. So the next morning I went down to meet him, and we set out to go fishing. As we were heading out, I said, "Thanks for coming fishing with me today, Andy." And the kid was like, "I'm not Andy, I'm Kyle." And I said, "Oh, I asked Andy to come today." And he said, "No, you didn't. You asked me." So I freaking asked the wrong twin the day before. So I had to spend the morning fishing with this bossy tattletale twin. Those are fun stories, but there are some more serious ones. In 2009, a high-end jewel thief broke into a luxury department store in Germany and stole close to $7 million in jewelry. Investigators discovered DNA evidence at the scene, like a hair or something, and this led to the arrest of a main suspect. But as it turned out, the suspect had an identical twin. Upon a suggestion from their lawyer, and because the evidence was based on DNA found at the scene, both men admitted committing the crime alone. Since they were identical twins and the court could neither differentiate between their DNA nor convict two people for the one crime, the case was dismissed and both men went free, and the $7 million in jewels was never recovered. Sometime in 2013, a young woman in Argentina named Edith Casas fell in love and married a man named Victor. The only catch was that Victor was serving a 13-year sentence for murdering Edith's twin sister, Joanna. The parents tried to stop it, and the father swore to never see the living daughter again, but Edith, the twin that married the guy who was in jail for killing her twin sister, claims that Victor is innocent, and it is possible that he is. A second man, Marco Diaz, who was the other twin Joanna's boyfriend at the time of her murder, is awaiting trial, and he is also charged with her murder. That seems impossible to me, but clearly I do not understand the criminal justice system in Argentina. In 2004, a woman named Holly Adams had a daughter, and she listed Ray Miller on the birth certificate as the father. But Ray begged to differ, insisting that he was not the father, but that his brother Richard was. Ray and Richard were identical twins, and it also happened that the mother, Holly, actually did engage in what you would call intimate relations with both of these men on the same day 9 months prior, and so a DNA test could not confirm which of the men was actually the father. So no one knows. Greasy. In this next section, we'll dive deep into a few more sinister, disturbing, creepy, and sometimes downright criminal worlds of twins gone wrong. You can help me keep doing right by going to the Renegade Files Patreon page through the link in the show notes to patreon.com/Renegade Files, where you can try out the entire content there for free for a whole week. And if you decide to stay, you can help crowdfund this show and help me keep making episodes and keeping them ad-free for all of us. For less than what you would tip a pizza delivery guy, you can make a huge difference to me because everyone's small amounts add up. My goal is to make Renegade Files my full-time job. I've been working really hard at it for 2.5 years so far. I love doing it, and if you like the shows and you want me to keep going, just join the others on Patreon and help a creator create. For doing so, you get bonus episodes, the research and transcripts and background music MP3s for every episode, and a bunch of other things. I make it all just for the RFA agents on Patreon. Thank you to those of you who helped me there already. And if you've thought about it, go ahead and click the link now and I'll see you in there. Thank you. Part 4. The Dark Side of Twins. As we have seen, not all stories about twins end in quaint anecdotes or uncanny coincidences. Some situations take a dark turn, and none so much as the story of June and Jennifer Gibbons. These twin girls were born on June 11, 1963 in Yemen, where their father was stationed as a technician working for the British Royal Air Force. The parents were from Barbados and had moved to the UK in 1960. they had 3 other children: Greta, who was born in 1957, David in 59, and Rosie in 67. So the twins were born between the older brother and sister and a younger sister. Soon after June and Jennifer were born, the family moved back to England. Then in 1974, they moved to Wales. The twins, 11 years old at this point, were inseparable. They gradually stopped talking to teachers, most family members, and outsiders. When they did speak, they often spoke in what is called an idioglossia, which is a made-up language only spoken between a very small group, usually 2 or 3 children, and most often siblings. When this occurs between twins, it's called cryptophagia. Initially, their language was a kind of sped-up Bajan Creole, which was the family's native speech from Barbados, so parents and friends could understand some of what the twins were saying. They were the only black children in the community and were often ostracized at school. This proved to be traumatic for the twins, eventually causing their school administrators to dismiss them early each day so that they might avoid bullying. So this continued, and the two withdrew into their own world. At this time, their secret language became even more idiosyncratic. They seemed to invent their own words and phrases, and soon their language was unintelligible to anyone else. They also displayed traits such as simultaneous actions, which often mirrored each other. The twins became increasingly reserved, and eventually spoke to no one except each other, and occasionally their younger sister Rosie. The girls continued going to school, but they refused to read, write, or speak. In 1974, a medic administering vaccinations at the school was made aware of their behavior and notified a child psychologist. This psychologist arranged for the twins to see a number of therapists who each tried, unsuccessfully, to get the girls to communicate with others. When this failed to work, they were sent to separate boarding schools in the belief that their reclusive behavior was reinforced by the two being together all the time. But when they were separated, they became catatonic and entirely withdrawn. So June and Jennifer Gibbons were brought home. Once they were reunited, the two spent several years isolating themselves in their bedroom, engaged in elaborate plays that they made with dolls. They created many plays and stories in a sort of soap opera style, reading some of them aloud on tape as gifts for their sister Rose. I'm not sure if they recorded the plays in English or in their made-up language. Then for Christmas in 1979, the twins both received diaries, and this inspired what would become their writing careers, in a manner of speaking, you could call it that. They got the diaries for Christmas in 1979, so that would make them 16 years old at the time. They ordered a mail-order course in creative writing. Both girls kept extensive diaries, and they both wrote a number of stories, poems, and novels. Their stories were mostly set in the United States, and particularly in Malibu, California for some reason. The stories involved young men and women who exhibited strange and often criminal behavior. June wrote a novel called The Pepsi-Cola Addict, in which a jock-type high school hero is seduced by his teacher, then sent away to a reform school where a homosexual guard makes advances toward him. The two girls pooled together their unemployment benefits and used them to self-publish The Pepsi-Cola Addict, and it was unavailable for purchase for decades. It was only available in 89 libraries in the world. Then, in October 2022, it was published as a limited edition print by publisher Cashin's Gap. Then it was published as a paperback in May 2023 by Strange Attractor. We'll come back to the Pepsi Cola Addict and where you can find that book in a minute. The Gibbons twins tried to publish other novels and stories, but they were unsuccessful. You can now buy some of their stories and books from places like Penguin Books. I have links to all of that in the Dark Intel files for this episode, available to the Renegade Files agents who support the show on Patreon. Link in the show notes, as you know. I don't know much about the other things they've written, but there are a few that we know of. For instance, Jennifer wrote a novel called The Pugilist. This tells the twisted tale of a physician whose son becomes terminally ill from a bad heart. The doctor becomes obsessed with saving his child's life, to the point where he kills the family dog to obtain its heart for a transplant. The dog heart does in fact save the boy's life, but the dog's spirit lives on in the child and becomes resentful that the father killed it to save the son. Ultimately, the dog's spirit, living now in the boy's body, has its revenge against the father. Okay, yes, that is crazy, but you have to admit, that's pretty good. In 1980, Jennifer wrote Disco Mania, which is the story of a young woman who discovers that the vibe of a local disco, so the music and the lights and drinks and atmosphere, incites patrons to insane violence. Here's a short excerpt. The place was full of swarming, pugnacious, dangerous, miscellaneous reptiles. Teenagers everywhere pounded their way on top of each other, crazily strangling, biting, and slashing each other with broken glass, smashed records, or sharpened blades. One publisher who refused the novel back in 1980 called it, quote, too violent, too sexual, and too futuristic. Jennifer followed up with The Taxi Driver's Son, a radio play called Postman and Postwoman, and several short stories. June Gibbons is considered to be an outside writer. I guess Jennifer too. An outside writer is someone who writes and publishes books but isn't part of the academic machine of English majors and MFAs and, I guess, corporate publishing. So like an underground writer. By that definition, I could be considered that too. So as Jennifer was writing Disco Mania, her twin sister June was writing The Pepsi Cola Addict. Both of them writing all day in the bedroom they shared and still speaking to no one else ever. Maybe rarely to their younger sister, but by this time the twins were 16 and the younger sister was in school, so away from home much of the time. So together, and otherwise alone, the twins kept to their room and wrote. The Pepsi Cola Addict, as I mentioned, was one of the books they did at this time, so let's go into that a little bit more. You can buy the Pepsi Cola Addict on Amazon. So if you go to the book page and select the Kindle edition, you can read a sample of it. I think 10% of the book, whatever they let you read. The sample is really cool because it has a few pages in the beginning, like the title page and a short intro that's written in June's handwriting. I think the title pages and an odd few lines that I think are from a Pepsi commercial tagline from the 80s, they look like they were written back when June was writing the book at 16. Then the intro passage was written later when one of those new publishers printed the newer edition. Regardless, that sample is fascinating, especially when you know a bit about the background of the author. It's stream of consciousness writing, to say the least. It stumbles here and there, and it backtracks in little reaffirming repetitions, but it has a steady rhythm, and it pulls you in with this hypnotic cadence and a movement of the story unfolding. It's kind of juvenile, but you can feel a kind of brilliance to it, but also desperation, confusion, and this feeling of inevitable incoherence. Like it feels like it's about to make sense. And then suddenly, it feels like it's about to make sense. Here, I'll give you a little sip of the Pepsi Cola addict. The tenement in which he lived with his mother and sister was alternatively too hot or too cold. The room remained suffocatingly hot with the contained heat of the day. Preston was thinking he was cold. His head felt neurotic and dizzy. It resembled ice. He thought he wouldn't mind if he lived in Arizona or even Hawaii. They lived on cool beverages and didn't care what you did. Sitting in his own pad and sipping 300 cans of Pepsi Cola every day, the thought made him thirsty. He was thirsty. He swallowed some more Pepsi, shifted his position, and his eyes commenced to wander around. Preston, nonchalant about his aspect of life, was probably unaccountably turning into a Pepsi Cola addict. At 14 years old, wherever he turned, he somehow failed to develop any sense of adventure and remained statically serene with the drink he called the high life. To him, Pepsi Cola was like shallow water to a fish. Okay, so that's quite enough. So Preston goes on to meet a girl at a sporting event, and he gets a crush on her, and he worries that his thoughts for her will override his thoughts about Pepsi Cola. And at the same time, his little sister is dating a jock that Preston doesn't like, and the story follows the characters around before and after parties and the beach and the other places they go, but we rarely go with them. We just hear about it before or after, but I've only read the sample online, so maybe the story unfolds somehow. It does make me want to read it, and I might. I mean, seriously, it feels like it's about to make sense. So you can go down the rabbit hole of what these twins wrote and the scavenger hunt of finding it online if that's your kind of thing. By the time they were 18, their novels had been long finished and gone nowhere except for one they had self-published and received one copy of. The other 39 copies had gone to the libraries. The second novel was refused, and the girls started hanging around some local boys, drinking heavily, doing some street drugs, and committing crimes like vandalism and arson, and they recorded all of this in their diaries. They started calling the police and taunting them, telling them that they were going to set a building on fire just before doing it, then running away to hide. They did things like this for over a year until they were finally caught, and when the police found their diaries, they were busted red-handed. I did read that they always would go through the buildings to make sure no one was in there, so it doesn't seem like they were trying to hurt anyone. Who knows what they were getting up to and why. So for all this mischief, they were sent to Broadmoor Hospital, which is a very high-security mental institution. They remained there for 11 years. It was during their time at Broadmoor that they agreed upon a plan, which was that one of them would have to die so the other one could live a normal life. For whatever reason, the twins agreed that it would be Jennifer who would sacrifice her life. In March of 1993, it was decided that the twins would be transferred to a lower security institution, and on the trip there, Jennifer became unresponsive. She was taken to a hospital where she died from sudden inflammation of the heart, but none of the doctors could find any cause for this sudden condition. Her death remains a mystery, and Sister June went on to live with her parents in Wales, where she lives still. She says every day she lives it for her sister who died, and that everything she sees, she believes that her sister in heaven can see it. Now, I want to reiterate that this episode should in no way be taken as being reflective of the character of twins in general, but when you start down the dark road of research into strange and unexplained things, you sometimes end up with bizarre results. And on a Renegade Files episode about the unexplained events surrounding twins, I would not be doing my job if I were to leave out the strange story of Ursula and Sabina Eriksson, so here we go. Ursula and Sabina Eriksson were twin sisters who were born in Sweden on the 3rd of November in 1967. They had a normal, loving childhood and young adulthood with no history of mental illness, and they were both in fine general health. Sabina was living a normal, happy life in Ireland with her own small family that included 2 children. Her twin sister Ursula was living in the United States. In 2008, Ursula traveled to Ireland to visit her sister Sabina. They would have been 41 years old at the time. Soon after her arrival, and for reasons unknown, the two embarked alone on a bus bound for Liverpool, England. Rather than store their luggage with the other passengers' bags, or even put them on the floor nearby, the two clung to their bags the entire time. This strange behavior got the attention of the bus driver, and at one of the stops, the driver insisted the bags be searched by the bus terminal security, and the women refused, so they were basically kicked off the bus at that point. The manager of the bus stop called the police, who met the twins, determined them to be harmless, and let them go on their way. I don't know if that policeman looked into their bags at that time or not. I don't think so. With the policeman gone, the two women left the bus stop on foot, jumped a guardrail, and tried to cross a busy highway, the M6 motorway, by just walking out into the speeding traffic. Drivers tried to swerve around them, but both of the twins were sideswiped by car fenders and bruised up a bit, and they ended up on the roadside where paramedics and police found them essentially unharmed. While the police were talking to them, both of the women jumped up and inexplicably ran into the oncoming traffic. They sustained multiple injuries, including multiple broken bones, cuts, and head injuries. When the police were able to grab them and drag them back to the roadside, they fought violently. They made several attempts to run back into the traffic and were eventually subdued, arrested, and admitted to a hospital for evaluation. Doctors found no explanation for their behavior. They weren't on drugs and hadn't been poisoned, and the only thing they could conclude was that the twins suffered from some kind of shared psychosis. Ursula was committed to a mental institution for 3 months, and for whatever reason, Sabina was released. Maybe because she had a family in Ireland? Upon her release, Sabina, again for reasons unknown, went to London, where she met a man who agreed to help her after hearing her story, or whatever story she told him, I guess. She ended up stabbing the guy to death and was found over his body hitting herself with a hammer. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and no one has ever been able to come up with any explanation for the entire ordeal. It's a mystery. Another set of infamous twins is Ronnie and Reggie Cray, who were organized crime bosses in London in the 60s. They were former military guys who copied the structure of Al Capone's organization to set up extortion, gambling, and truck hijacking operations in London and the surrounding areas. And they used the money they made to build nightclubs in the city where they became celebrities of sorts, hobnobbing with the movie stars and socialites who frequented their swanky clubs. They did have a reputation for violently enforcing their extortion and protection rackets, and eventually, in 1969, both were sentenced to life in prison for all kinds of crimes. They allegedly committed these over the years, and it included murder. Ronnie Cray was eventually declared insane, and he was sent to Broadmoor Hospital, and he was ironically there at the same time that the Gibbons twins were there. They became friends, and Ronnie Cray used to send the twins birthday cards. But even while locked up, the Cray twins continued their business operation, and in 1985, officials at Broadmoor Hospital discovered a business card of Ronnie's that led to evidence that the twins, from separate institutions, were operating Craylay Enterprises, a lucrative bodyguard and protection business for the Hollywood stars. They were doing this together with their older brother Charlie Cray, who was not in jail at the time. According to documents found through the Freedom of Information Act, we know that one of their clients was none other than Frank Sinatra, who hired 18 bodyguards from Craylay Enterprises when he visited Wimbledon in 1985. According to law enforcement officials, they knew of and were concerned about this operation, but they believed there was no legal basis to shut it down. Of course, there are also many celebrities who are or who have twins. Scarlett Johansson has a twin brother, Hunter. Rachel Sutherland is Kiefer Sutherland's twin sister. Ashton Kutcher has a twin brother, Michael. We all know Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. They famously took turns playing one daughter on the sitcom Full House, and that was a long time ago. Giovanni and Marissa Ribisi are twins. Parker Posey has a twin brother, Chris. John Heder, who played Napoleon Dynamite, has an identical twin, Dan. Vin Diesel's twin brother, Paul Vincent, is a film editor. And Elvis Presley had an identical twin brother who was born 35 minutes before the king, and he died at birth. And there are many more. My summary. As a society, we tend to be very visual. When we see two people who are identical twins, it gets our attention. Many parents of identical twins dress them the same, particularly when they're little, and the good, bad, and ugly of that psychological impact could probably be debated for a lifetime. Whether twins are identical or fraternal, they were born together and many of them share lifelong bonds. Sometimes that evolves into deep connections and even shared languages, and in extreme cases of neglect or abuse, this can result in stunning criminal or antisocial behavior, but most twins are like everyone else, trying to figure out life as they live its ups and downs. It's always the sensational stories that get people's attention, and the stories about twins having unexplained connections across vast distances of time and space, that hints at something greater going on in our world than mere materialism. I think this is what fascinates us. Those stories that defy the common everyday explanations make us wonder if there are other forces at work in our lives. Angels, soulmates, love. We are all connected to each other, just as all things are connected in a dazzling web of life and living. And maybe some twins are just connected a little bit more. Thank you so much for traveling with me to investigate the fascinating connection of twins. Subscribe or follow Renegade Files now so together we can meet here next time and explore the deepest mysteries, analyze our covert culture, and dive into the highest level conspiracies. I am grateful to have you in the Renegade Files crew. Please help Renegade Files keep going by becoming an RFA agent on Patreon. You'd spend more on one drink and a muffin at Starbucks. Do it for the bonus episodes and more. Link in the show notes. Free for a week to check it out. Sign up in seconds. Cancel anytime. And help a brother keep on rocking in the free world. Thank you to the RFA agents on Patreon already. You make this show work. Join them and me on Patreon today, and I will see you in there. Cheers. Until our next adventure, I'm your host, Lex Gordon. Stay Stay wild, dragon child.